Hi, I'm Mike Overly, author of Guitar Encyclopedia. This is Guitar Forum 2.0. Welcome back. Tonight's lesson is going to be about signal processing. And this will be an overview of signal processing. And the purpose of this lesson is to dispel the misconception, let's say, that when you walk into a music store and you go to buy an effects pedal, a stomp box you might call it, you think that there's like a gazillion of them. It looks like it, all those different colors. Actually, it's like what we have on the floor here. And there's all these pedals that you think you have a choice of. So you think there's many, and you're all confused. But actually, tonight's lesson is going to show us that no matter how many pedals you think there are, there's only 3. And therefore, we're now going to go into what those 3 pedals are and continue on from there. But before we start, I'd like to show you a couple books that you might enjoy. Let's see this book here and get it over there. And so this book is called Stomp Box. This is really a cool book by Guitar Player Magazine. It tells you the history of effects pedals and their manufacturers and a little bit about some of their players. Another book that predates that, back to the 70s actually, in fact, and is one of the first of any of it. He called it Guitar Gadgets, and he's got his little pictures on there and all that. And this is Craig Anderton, and he was a writer for Guitar Player Magazine and stuff. Anyway, this is from the 70s, I think 1977, and what this book does was for the home hobbyist who wanted to build their own pedals. Of course, that doesn't really happen that much anymore, if at all, because now it's been taken over by Roland, who manufactures under the Boss name, and MXR and DOD and many manufacturers who now make effects pedals, and that creates this whole plethora of stomp boxes that you think there are. But now let's clarify what we're really talking about. You walk into a music store and you look at all these pedals and you think, wow, man, what do I get? There's so many. But in fact, there's only 3 types of pedals. And those 3 types of pedals would be the volume alteration or manipulation or modulation. In other words, level altering devices. And then there is the frequency altering devices. And then there's time shifting devices. So basically, it's the 3 aspects of music that are being manipulated by pedals, and that is the volume, the frequency or pitch, and the time. Now, all this revolution in pedals was made possible, though, because in 1948 at Bell Labs, they invented the transistor. And therefore, what that enabled to happen is that they could miniaturize things and shrink stuff down, because prior to that, of course, everything was vacuum tubes, and it took up a lot of space and created a lot of heat and all this kind of stuff. So the invention of the transistor enabled miniaturization, and then that lended itself to creating smaller, what we call stomp boxes or pedals or whatever you want to call your thing on the floor. Now this transistor thing that was invented in 1948 replaced the vacuum tube. And then that led to how to manipulate the signal, the electron flow from your guitar to your amp, and put this stuff in between it and affect the signal flow. So what we have are these tone shaping circuits. And these tone shaping circuits first appeared really in the home organ, which was very popular, and the Hammond organ and all that kind of stuff. They were based upon transistors, and they had all these effects and stuff. But then what happened was, of course, the rise of the Beatles and the popularity of guitar and all that sort of thing. So that lended itself to make these effects pedals for the electric guitar. Now, one of the first devices that was actually created was created to replace or simulate what actually happened by volume, actually an accident. So there are many, many stories about what this first volume altering device really was, which we would today call distortion or fuzz or overdrive, or there are many other names that fall under this category of volume altering devices. But basically it's distortion. It's so popular now that it's just built right into your, to most amps, and you just create distortion. Or you have masters and gains and create that sort of overdriving concept. But the idea was that distortion, then there's many myths about this whole thing. What really was the first distortion and who did it, and on and on and on. And there are a lot of stories like they're recording Rocket 88 and the amp falls off the truck and it creates distortion, or Ray Davies with the Kinks stabs his speakers with pencils to create this distorted sound, and all these sort of things. But the more, let's say, probably more believable myth, or maybe it's a true story, is that in Nashville in the early 50s and on into the 60s, was everything was driven by tubes, vacuum tubes. And vacuum tubes, of course, have filaments and air. It's like your like a incandescent light bulb. And what happened was that in that mixing board, then those tubes got faulty, they have gas in it and all this kind of stuff, and that created a distortion of the actual vacuum tube. But they didn't really want that, so they replaced the tube, and now everything's all clean and everybody was happy. But some of those people that were playing in there thought that that sound was like really cool and fit like what was coming on strong in the new thing, the rock and roll thing, and so therefore they, with the development of the transistor and all that stuff, then they made a circuit that actually took the smooth sine wave, and it's called clipping. Then they clipped the sine wave, created a basic square wave, and that square wave is the sound we hear. And that was really how distortion happened. Now, that replacement through transistors of the vacuum fault is actually that the transistor gave much more reliability and control, and in a certain sense changed from the concepts of analog to digital. And therefore, they licensed that technology of that first distortion circuit and created the actual first. This is one of them, actually. This is the Maestro fuzz tone. It was Gibson made it, and that became the first popular fuzz tone. And actually, the fuzz tone was the pedal that was used by Keith Richards in Satisfaction, and Tommy Tedesco in the Green Acres theme, and you know but it was a totally unique and new sound that they hadn't had before, and now they had it, and everybody thought that was really great. And as soon as Keith Richards had Satisfaction in like 1965 or 4, whatever it was, then these things started to sell because everybody wanted to make that sound. So the Maestro fuzz tone is a highly collectible issue, and if you find one at a garage sale or whatever, make sure you pick it up. So that leads us then to the development on into the late 60s, and then you have many people making fuzz, and Jimi Hendrix then starts to use the fuzz face and distortion and stacks of Marshalls and all that kind of stuff, and that becomes the popular sound. And then in the 70s, Roland from Japan starts making the Boss line, and then that becomes popular and mass-produced and distributed, and everybody started really gravitating towards Boss. And Boss is still very popular manufacturer. Anyway, here's just a Boss pedal. There's like gazillions of these things, like we're saying. But since this one, now we're not into this yet, but since this is a limiter, then what this really is some type of volume altering device. And then in later guitar forums, we'll go more deeply into the line extension, let's call it, of what volume altering devices would be, and then we'll just focus on that one thing. But tonight, remember, it's an overview, so we want to just use 3 pedals tonight. Now, the 3 pedals that I'm going to use is I'm going to use a distortion pedal. This is the DS1 Boss pedal, so that'll be our volume altering device that we're going to use tonight. It's a classic pedal, and one of the first, actually, distortion pedals. Then we're going to use a digital reverb delay pedal for our time-altering device segment. And then on the floor here, if I can stand up, on the floor here, then we're going to use this vintage Morley wah pedal, and we will use this in two different ways because this pedal does two things. It functions as a volume control pedal, and it functions as a wah-wah pedal, and therefore it's dual in the sense of that it's a volume wah pedal, and we want to use it for the wah-wah function because then that will be our frequency altering device. So let's begin. The first of the pedals that we're going to talk about tonight, or even the category of pedals, is volume. So volume is amplitude, and obviously that sounds like amp, and therefore you would begin to think of it firstly like that. You would go to your amp, and then you would just turn the volume up and down, and that would be a volume altering device. The deal though with pedals are that you can't play the guitar and move your amp volume knob. So they put them on pedals and put them on the floor, and that freed up your hands. That's really what the stomp box popularity really became. Also, then you have a volume knob on your guitar itself, so you can turn your guitar up or down in volume, on or off, basically. And so that's another. But once again, Jeff Beck and some of those guys, they actually have good techniques of using this volume on their guitar and create swells, we call it, in volume with their fingers as they play guitar. But that's a certain technique that would have to be understood and developed and all that. So the workaround for that alteration of volume would be to put it on the floor in a volume pedal, and now you could have no volume, and then bring the volume up with your foot. So you could create now basically what that functions as is it takes away the attack of the guitar. So when you hit your string, it's got a very percussive beginning, but when you use the volume control pedal, you take that attack off the front. And it swells, it comes at you from not a hard attacking sound, but somewhere in that after the attack thing. So the volume pedal is a cool feature and creates cool sounds when you actually combine that with some other effects like time shifting effects that we'll do later in the show. So anyway, that's just a straight kind of like just change the volume up and down, so that's cool. But now we move off into volume altering devices that really turn out to clip the sine wave and create different wave shapes like square waves and sine wave, sawtooth waves and ramp waves and all kinds of other things that each one of these things then throw off different types of harmonics in the wave shape. And then when you boost the volume on it and tweak the tone a little bit, then it creates all these different types of distortions and overdrives and other things that we'll look at in a later show. But this first idea now is the concept of taking a sine wave and clipping it into a square wave. So what we have now is an unaltered guitar sound, which we call a clean sound. Now what we're going to do is have the distorted sound. Now we'll start the distortion at a very low distortion. So in other words, we're not bringing very much of that distorted sound into the overall sound. But you can hear that it's still distorted. It's all. Now, defining these sounds that you hear in words is really tough. So we won't try to describe things. We'll just listen to it, and then you can make up your own descriptions. And maybe you want to email me and tell me what you think it sounds like. So that would be a low level distortion added to the signal. Then, of course, this has a tone control on it, which would be part of frequency, and so you could make it more bassy or more trebly. or in the middle, or bassier. So that has some sort of frequency altering built within it to create those to bring out those harmonics is actually what it is. Now, when you use that tone on the pedal in conjunction with your pickup selectors, let's take the distortion back off. A pickup selector is another tone. It's not a stomp box though, but it's a tone control because the front pickup sounds more bassier. The middle pickup sounds less bassier and a little bit treble. And the back pickup sounds totally treble. And then it's a 5-way switch, so the one in the middle is 1 and 2, kind of in the middle of that thing, and 4 is in the middle of 2 and 3, and creates that kind of sound. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have frequency altering in pickup selection itself. So you can see that when you multiply all this stuff together, the tone changes within the pickup selection as well as the tone knob itself. So if I stayed in 1 and played, I could turn the tone knob down and have that muted bassy sound, or bring it back up, or go to that back pickup, have that real sharp treble thing, or roll that off. So the tone possibilities, frequency possibilities of the guitar itself are great. So all that of your guitar, which we'd call the signal, the unaltered signal, in conjunction with your pedal, that creates just a myriad of sounds that you could mess around with forever and all night, and try to find that sound that makes it sound like the player that you like, or the sound you like. So here is the pickup 1 with the distortion. Bring the tone up a little bit, and now let's start to increase the distortion. So that would be like lowest, there's like a middle, and now max distortion. Like Crazy Train kind of sounds, or other sounds. Now when we bring the 5th pickup up, that creates more of that trebly edge thing. So that's a little bit about altering the volume and through a distortion pedal. Now we'll move on to frequency. Now frequency is like what we've been doing, changing frequency by pickup selection, or changing frequency by the actual tone knob, or now we'll use the wah-wah pedal. Now what the wah-wah pedal really is, it's another one of those things to free up your hands and put it on the floor. So the wah-wah pedal really is, this is a potentiometer, and what the potentiometer do is cut and baste in frequencies, not cutting and basting actually, it's just rolling off, it's cutting frequencies. And therefore you have treble, you have bass, but if you could do that real fast, it would give you kind of a wah-wah sound. But they put a real wide potentiometer on the wah-wah pedal so that it goes, especially the Morley optical triggered wah-wah pedal, goes all the way from almost muted. It's like almost all the frequencies are rolled off, and now it'll sweep all the way through to like the highest frequencies, like 20 hertz or even above. It's got quite a hiss on it. So you can see that it has a wide array or wide range of frequency, and then that enables it to give that real strong wah sound that is different in different manufacturers of wah pedals like Crybabies and things like that have a much narrower throw, we call it. Whereas the Morley, and that's why I like it, the throw on the Morley is like super, super wide, so you can catch it at all frequencies of your guitar and still create a wah sound. So here would be a use of playing without the wah, just clean guitar, and now with the wah-wah. So you can see that it adds an incredible dimension to it. Of course, Hendrix used his wah-wah in many, many songs that were popular by him, like... On and on and on with many, many, many songs that use the wah pedal. Now, all that stuff is pitch related, and now what we're going to move on to is the time related. Of course, we're just blowing through all this stuff in our overview, and then we'll spend more time with it on other shows where we really look more deeply at each individual type. Now, this next concept is time shifting. Now, time shifting simply is a delay, would be what it really is, a delay of the original signal and the sound that comes back to you. And of course, cavemen had that. They'd be in a cave and they go, hey, and it goes, hey, 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 hey. Now, when that sound that's coming back to you is measured then, and it's measured in milliseconds, 1,000 divisions of a second. And these milliseconds then are used to create the terms you use to say, is that reverb or is that echo? And there are ranges of these things. Now, this particular pedal has 3 delay modes, let's call it. The first delay mode is from 32 to 125 milliseconds, and the second is 125 to 500 milliseconds, and the third one is 500 to 2,000 milliseconds, and of course 2,000 milliseconds would be 2 seconds. So that third delay is you strike your sound, attack your sound, and then 2 seconds later the next one comes back. So there are many, many, many possibilities on the delay side of things. So if we let's put the glasses on so I can see what's going on here. If we put it on a delay 1, then now what we're going to do is I'm just going to have the actual delay part. And now you can work within that range of that 32 to 125. I'm making it go further apart. Now, when you bring that delay back with your original signal, then you get to hear the original signal with the delay added. Now we'll go to the second. And it's making them further apart in milliseconds. And then finally the biggest ones would be, that's 500 milliseconds up to the 2 second. who's got time to wait 2 seconds. And of course there's a tone control on that too, so you can adjust the tone of that thing. Let's go back to the second. And now create this delay. A little faster. And even though I'm hitting the string one time, you hear two, and that's called slapback echo, and was a very important part. Let's get it further apart. Now, we're running out of time here at the show. We'll come back to all this stuff. Reverb, of course, is the sound of like airplane hangars or small closets or different sized rooms. That's the way they kind of talk about it. This particular pedal has 4 different rooms. Small room, medium room, big room, and plate reverb. So in the very end, let's just put a medium-sized room, put a little distortion, put a little wah-wah. And so that was using those 3 devices in conjunction. A quick show tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in for other guitar forums where we'll go a little bit more deeper into each one of those individual categories. And so until next time, go out and get yourself some stomp boxes and have some fun. The one thing I was going to say, let's do it, is that all those pedals on the floor individually create a mess. And also you can't change 2 pedals at the same time easily. So therefore Boss creates things like this. This is called a pedal board. And all those individual pedals that are on the floor plus more are hardwired into integrated circuits in this. And now you can control everything from the touch of one button and change many, many, many different parameters at the same time. So, wish you the best of all good things, and I will see you next time.